Hey, all you freaks and creeps, and welcome back to another episode of the
Cleveland Monster Club.
It has been a while, but due to the state of everything going on in the world, that's to be expected. But we are back, and we have a lot of episodes coming your way. Today, myself, Sister Psycho, am joined by a special guest, frequent poster and member of the Cleveland Monster Club, Eric Baran. We took a trip to Put-in-Bay because they apparently have an entire haunted tour called Haunted Put-in-Bay. So throughout the video, we will be showing pictures and videos of this trip, as well as commentary on the experience, along with commentary from fellow members.
Reverend Morbid here.
Darkangel checking in.
So let's jump right into it.
It's hosted by Bill Krejci of Franklin Castle,
Which is my favorite spooky place. And maybe I'm just biased because that place is in my hometown, but I love the Franklin Castle, and I hope one day I can meet Bill and actually go inside of the Franklin Castle.
and was also the host of the tour. And he also has a book out called Haunted Put-in-Bay, so look out for that on Amazon and Apple.
First stop on the tour was Topsy Turvy Restaurant.
Topsy Turvy. This location, we have employees hearing doors slamming that are locked, cooler doors slamming when nobody's around.
While Sean was counting out the register, they heard that door just beyond the ice machine over there open and then slam.
And also footsteps on the hardwood floors that come right up to you and stop.
Second stop on the tour was the Put-in-Bay Winery, also known as
The Dollar House.
Haunted, it's haunted. Oh.
Right in front of you, this is the Put-in-Bay Winery. It opened a few years ago as a winery. It's one of the older, the part on the left, your left, is the one of the older structures on the island, but the part on the right, that lower structure made out of wood, that is the oldest standing structure in the village of Put-in-Bay.
In the top floor of the Dollar House in the tower, sometimes you can see an apparition of a young lady.
Still, all but one of those daughters remained bachelorettes the rest of their lives. It wasn't because their father told them not to marry.
And in the older part of this house, the actual first structure ever built on the island, there's been said that you can hear a woman crying.
Hold It. Fun, crazy fact. Prior to the tour, we were kind of going around Put-in-Bay because it was a day trip. We stumbled upon a cemetery.
So we had gone to the cemetery on the island. There were actually two cemeteries.
This cemetery was called the Crown Hill Cemetery.
The one cemetery that we visited had some tombs and some stones of names for the houses that we went and saw.
It held a lot of familiar names.
For the Dollar family.
The De Riveras, a lot of past politicians and mayors of the town.
And there was a few other ones, and that's what these pictures are of.
You couldn't obviously get into the mausoleum, but it was really cool looking in, seeing the names, seeing all the names on the exterior tombstones. It had a very quiet feeling. And it was just cool to revisit this information later on during the tour. Back to our regularly scheduled tour information. Fourth stop on our tour, Hooligans Restaurant.
Hooligans.
The most common disturbances are heard from the upstairs. When anyone's sitting downstairs, sometimes they will hear footsteps running across the floor. They'll hear doors opening and slamming. They'll hear talking up there. They'll go up and
It is said that there had been a secret society that did meetings and initiations on the third floor of this business. So part of one of the initiations that this secret society did, they actually had a skeleton of an ex-member who used to be actually a member of this secret society, and they would use that towards their initiations. In most cases, they had found that skeleton But for this particular group, they never found the skeleton and said that it might be still in the building somewhere in between the walls and the floors.
Now, what I tell you about
Sometimes
locking people up in the wall?
footsteps and chains dragging across the floor.
Fifth stop on our tour, Put-in Bay Distillery and Brewery. And keep a watch on this one because we've got some fun facts coming about this place.
Put-in Bay Distillery and Brewing Company.
Who came here in the 1890s with little more than a peddler's pack on his back, selling souvenirs of Put-in Bay. A few years later, he had made enough money that he was able to buy a horse and a buggy, go around the island with that cart selling more souvenirs of Put-in Bay. A few years later, he had amassed enough money that he built a little business over at the far end of Delaware Avenue.
Whatever you do when you go into this restaurant, do not mention Benny. Benny is an ex-employee that used to work there when it was a mill years ago. And whenever you mention Benny, bad stuff happens. Things come off the walls. Stuff gets knocked over. Pots and pans start clanging together. So whenever you go there, just don't mention Benny.
So fun fact, similarly to the cemetery that had the Diller family in it, we actually had lunch at this place earlier in the day, and when we saw that it was a part of the tour, we really wished we had said Benny's name just to see what would have happened. The sixth stop on our tour, Gibraltar Island.
Okay, so on this one, a gentleman bought the whole island for $3,000, built the castle on the island.
He is the man who came up with the concept of war bonds. During the Civil War, he raised $1 billion to support the Union Army. So, he bought that island over there. One morning, he had breakfast with Senor de Rivera, who was the owner of these islands.
And he had a servant that he had fallen in love with, but the servant was already in love with somebody who was running the carriage house.
And he asked him, how much would you be willing to sell me Gibraltar Island for?
And he and her got into an argument one night, and either she jumped from the top turret or was pushed. But it is said that you can hear her crying up in the top of that turret, and sometimes people see her walking on the beach below where she had fallen.
That one's probably my favorite just because I'm imagining back then, this is a story about a servant who either fell out of the castle or was pushed out of the castle by the castle's owner. And I'm thinking back in a day with servants just in general, that service, because they said the servant was promised to somebody in the carriage house. Well, back then, you know, that's what servants were, that's who they could marry. They had to marry somebody of their standard, which would be somebody of the carriage house, or if they were working the fields, that would be something that they would be doing, is being promised to somebody working in the fields, or in-house servant. So just the fact of just imagining and putting myself back into that time frame, and the fact that, you know, she did not want his advances, and I mean, I'm picturing that definitely there was foul play and that he got pretty upset with her, and I think he definitely pushed her out of that castle. And the fact that people actually say that they see her walking along the beach crying, I mean, I'm sorry, if it doesn't get any passionate about ghosts at this point, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I want to know so much more about that story. So that's definitely my favorite.
The seventh stop on our tour, the Beer Barrel Bar, also known as the world's longest bar. And it's true. It's 410 feet long, and it's a Guinness World Record.
Okay, on this one, the building mysteriously burned down once. He rebuilt the building in another location. That building mysteriously burnt down. Then they rebuilt on the same property, and it burnt down again. The fourth time they built the building out of stone, so it won't burn down. They just put wood siding on it. It is also said that there are 3 bodies buried somewhere on the property, either in the lawn or underneath the building, of a mother and her 2 children.
Next up, the Country House.
So the Country House.
Built by the Ward family. When they built it, they were living originally over on Toledo Avenue. They moved in here, and unfortunately, within just a few days of moving in, their daughter passed away.
Originally was like a bed and breakfast, and It's said that sometimes there would be a sailor walking up and down the steps who had never stayed there, and it's always an apparition. And also, when the diner was downstairs for the bed and breakfast, they would clean up at night and put all the chairs on top of the tables, and they'd leave the room and come back into the room 30 or 40 seconds later, and all the chairs would be back in front of the tables as if they'd never put them up on top of the tables to clean the floor.
And now, the Park Hotel. More fun facts coming soon.
The Park Hotel, one of the most haunted places on the island in Put-in-Bay.
He saw the most unique structure being built. Crazy looking building. He'd never seen anything like it. And of course, everything has a price. He happened to give the right price. He said, I want to have it. I want to buy it. So they stopped building. They broke it down. They shipped it over to the island.
There was a guest who frequented the hotel. She always requested room 14. She was known as the governess. She died in the hotel. She fell down the steps from her room all the way down to the lobby and perished that way. Also, room 17, supposedly an owner had killed himself in that room, and it's told that sometimes people feel like they're being watched. Sometimes things turn on and turn off by themselves. Also in the hotel, sometimes people are staying there and they say they hear children running up and down the halls, and they complain to the management about the children running up and down the halls, and the management say there are no children staying at the hotel at that time. One guest she's a medium, and she goes there all the time, and she said that she heard people screaming, "Let me out, we can't get out," and they were stuck in a stairwell. Well, when she talked to the management about it, there was no stairwell, but they found out later that they had blocked the stairwell off to the servants' quarters in order to make other rooms in the hotel. And they also have a barber chair from the barber shop down by Pasquelli's.
You might want to keep this barber chair in mind for later on in the video.
It's actually in the entrance of the hotel. Sometimes the barber chair will start spinning by itself. And if you try to spin this barber chair, it's really hard to spin because it's old and it doesn't want to move that easily. So the fact that it spins by itself is kind of weird also.
So prior to this trip, we found out about these 2 haunted rooms, and we thought, hey, maybe we should try to stay in one of these rooms. We called, and there were rooms actually available. One of the 2 rooms was available. Unfortunately, in order to stay in the rooms, you have to stay the entire weekend, so the trip did not work out. But this does lend credence to possible future episodes of an overnight ghostly experience. Next up, Pasquale's.
I've never been to a haunted house, and that's a goal, and I know it's going to happen. I know hopefully when we can get together as a group and take you through a tour, that's going to be really, really awesome. And I want to be scared. I want to be talked to from ghosts. I want to feel that energy. So Park Hotel, definitely, that's good to know that you have to stay the whole weekend in order to be able to stay in the house. So I love spooky houses, you know, the way that they look and what possibly is awaiting for you inside. So
okay, Pasquelli's used to be a barber shop back in the day. The barber would cut everybody's hair all the time, and one guy walked by the one time and he saw the barber sitting in his chair reading a newspaper, and he wasn't moving, and it turned out that he had passed away in that chair reading his newspaper.
Remember that barber chair that got mentioned earlier?
And he also collected violins, and it said after he had passed, they always heard violins playing throughout the barber shop, and nobody ever found those violins until after they were trying to do a renovation. They found a closet that was walled over, and in the closet up on the top shelf in a cubby, they found his collection of violins. And once they removed those violins, they no longer heard the violin music playing in the building.
Always saving the best for last. The first thing we saw when we arrived and the last thing we saw before we left.
Okay, last but not least, we have the Perry Monument.
This was an evil action that occurred during the War of 1812, about 12 miles out from where we are right now. Only time in history an entire British naval squadron has ever taken in combat. But equally as important, the monument honors the peace that the United States shares with Canada and Great Britain.
The Perry Monument has some apparitions occasionally of somebody being up in the rafters. Years ago, they used to do tours where you were allowed to go all the way to the top of the monument, and they had sections that were gated off you could not get to, and people would say they would see somebody up in the rafters getting ready to jump, and so they don't allow people up there anymore. Also with the Perry Monument, it was actually built in memory of the Battle of Lake Erie. Originally they had 3 bodies from the US side that they had found, and 3 bodies from the British side, and they were buried in the park by the cannonballs. When they built the monument, they moved them to the monument and they buried them directly underneath the commemorative plaque that you stand on and read. So that makes the Perry Monument the largest tombstone in the world.
Well, I really hope that all of you enjoyed this video. The whole tour was really amazing. It runs the entire summer season in Put-in-Bay on Tuesdays and Fridays. It's very inexpensive. The rules are a little bit different right now for how the tour works because of COVID, but they do follow all social distancing and state mandated guidelines. It was very safe. I felt very comfortable being there.
So anyway, maybe, yeah, like Sister Psycho was saying, we can hopefully do a weekend edition.
It's definitely on my bucket list to go on this tour.
Hopefully when all this COVID craziness clears up, and we could do some ghost hunting as well as some more socializing and talking about different things of that nature, of the horror nature.
Special shout outs to Sister Psycho, who is amazing with these videos. I mean, Sister's got skills. And let's definitely give props, mad props to Eric Baran, who was the guy who was telling the story of each slide as they were going through the locations. I could listen to him for hours. He's a very, very good storyteller. So definitely, I'm sure we're going to have him on more content. Cleveland Monster Club content coming soon.
This is Sister Psycho. I want to thank our special guest and fellow Cleveland Monster Club member Eric Baran for telling me about this and going with me, as well as Reverend Morbid, Darkangel for all of their commentary throughout the video. We will be back soon with a lot of new content, and see you all soon. Stay creepy and fun. Bye!